And today, I am announcing that the Justice Department will ask a federal court in Texas to subject the state of Texas to a pre-clearance regime similar to the one required by Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act.
Texas is first on the list of states with new restrictive voter ID laws that Attorney General Eric Holder intends to challenge. The Justice Department blocked the Texas law in 2012 under the pre-clearance rule in the Voting Rights Act. That rule forced states with a history of disenfranchising minority voters to get permission before changing voting laws. But just 2 hours after the Supreme Court struck down that part of the Voting Rights Act, Texas reintroduced its voter ID law. The Justice Department also blocked the state from using an electoral map drawn up in secret by a group of all-white Republican representatives.
Based on the evidence of intentional racial discrimination that was presented just last year in the redistricting case of Texas v. Holder, as well as the history of pervasive voting-related discrimination against racial minorities that the Supreme Court itself has recognized, we believe that the state of Texas should be required to go through a pre-clearance process whenever it changes its voting laws and practices. This is the department's first action to protect voting rights following the Shelby County decision, but it will not be our last.
The next state on the list could be North Carolina. The legislature, now controlled by Republicans for the first time in a century, is working on one of the most restrictive voter ID laws in the nation. The bill passed the state Senate yesterday and could disenfranchise more than 300,000 voters who don't have the correct state-issued IDs. The North Carolina bill would also cut a week off early voting and end same-day registration, which is actually popular in the state, even among Republicans. Joining me now is North Carolina Democratic State Representative Alma Adams and Ari Berman of The Nation magazine. Representative Adams, I'd like to go to you first. As we talk about Texas and look towards North Carolina, the measures that are being proposed are some of the most restrictive in the country, and yet you look at the numbers of people in North Carolina. 56% of the state votes early, 78% of North Carolinians support the current system, 75% say they have voted early. Could this strategy not backfire on North Carolina Republicans?
Absolutely, because the numbers that you mentioned are not just Democratic voters. And so, yes, it will impact all of the voters in our state, regardless of party, whether they're unaffiliated. Every voter will be impacted, and particularly those who, as you said, vote early. A number of our citizens vote early. They like voting early. It's convenient. They like voting on Sunday. It is convenient. And so this is going to have a tremendous impact, and I believe it is going to backfire.
Ari, you are, I believe, in Texas, where the redistricting is somewhat shocking, and that is the first piece of legislation that the Attorney General seems to be working on, which is to say the electoral maps that the Texas committees have redrawn. And I just want to quote, think progress on that vote rigging and that redistricting. A panel of federal judges found that substantial surgery was done to predominantly black districts, cutting off representatives' offices from their strongest fundraising bases. Meanwhile, white Congress members' districts were either preserved or redrawn to include particular country clubs, and in one case, the school belonging to the incumbent's grandchildren. The new map was also drawn in secret by white Republican representatives without notifying their black and Latino peers. I think the level, I mean, we talk about gerrymandering and it's bandied about as a sort of something that happens in a bipartisan fashion, but the sort of racist underpinnings of this redistricting, I think, are fairly shocking to most people and deplorable.
Well, absolutely, Alex, and that's why both the redistricting maps and the voter ID law passed by Texas last year were blocked by the federal courts in the same week, which is pretty much unprecedented. And Texas has become a poster child for voter suppression. That's why the Attorney General is starting with Texas in terms of what they're going to do in a post-Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act world. And you have a situation where there's tremendous amount of change in Texas, really at the forefront of demographic change. And that's why Republicans in Texas have done absolutely everything they can to try to subvert that demographic change and to subvert the changing minority voting power in the state right now.
Representative Adams, we know that there's been a great movement afoot in North Carolina, the Moral Mondays, and there seems to be real outrage over some of these restrictive measures, not just in terms of voting rights, but on a host of different issues. How are people in North Carolina, how are your constituents reacting to these proposals? And is there a sense of fear and indignation around this?
Well, people are absolutely upset about what's going on, and they're demonstrating their displeasure about that on Moral Mondays. They are coming to this General Assembly en masse. Thousands of people have come. Almost 800 people have been arrested already. And this is really the last draw. This voter intimidation act, which is what we call it because that's exactly what it does. We have not had an issue in North Carolina with voter fraud. But this bill goes too far, and it creates all kinds of obstacles for people. They've actually looked at the ways in which people have been successful in turning out this vote. It targets various populations of African Americans, of women, of students, all of those people who normally would vote and vote in large numbers. Those are going to be the citizens who will be impacted, and that was a part of the plan, not just for North Carolina, but I think it's a national plan.
You know, Ari,
but we're unhappy about it. Our constituents are unhappy about it as well.
Ari, as the representative points out, this is part of sort of a grand evil design, and it doesn't just begin and end with voter suppression efforts. This is a concerted effort to make life difficult and make voting hard and making the democratic process something that not everybody is a part of. In Texas, legislative action includes abortion restrictions. North Carolina, 70,000 people have been cut from unemployment benefits. There have been changes made to the university system. There are cuts to pre-K programs. I mean, this is systematic disenfranchisement of a certain section of the electorate. And effectively, once these predominantly conservative politicians get elected to office, it's very hard to vote them out.
Well, absolutely, Alex, and it really has been a four-step plan for subverting democracy. The first thing you do is you win elections with huge corporate money, which is what Republicans in North Carolina did in 2010 and 2012. The second thing you do is gerrymander the lines in such an egregious way so that you can try to stay in power for as long as possible. The third thing you do is you pass a host of unpopular policies to benefit the 1% and hurt everybody else. And then you make it harder for your political opponents to then vote you out of office based on those unpopular policies. And so what the North Carolina Republicans are doing is so transparent. It's a blatant power grab. It can't be seen as anything else. And I do think it's going to backfire because people are going to see what's going on here. They're going to get motivated through Moral Mondays and through other avenues. And they're going to vote these politicians out, I think, sooner than the politicians in power are expecting.
Well, all the more reason to watch what the Attorney General does with the Department of Justice. Ari Berman of The Nation and North Carolina State Representative Alma Adams, thanks so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you very much.